Hi, welcome to Someone Else's Movie, the original podcast where an actor, writer, director, or nebulous industry figure gives a little love to a movie they didn't make. I'm Norm Wilner. I'm a critic, consultant, and programmer based in Toronto, and this is The Other Thing I Do. My guest this week is Alison McAlpine, a Montreal writer and documentarian who specializes in experimental hybrid projects like the Scots ghost story Second Sight and the Nightscape documentary Cielo. Her new short film, Perfectly a Strangeness, has been picking up accolades since its debuts at Cannes and TIFF in 2024, and now it's up for Best Documentary Short Film at the Academy Awards this Sunday, March 15th. And I'm delighted to have her on the podcast for this special weekend episode. Alison picked Toni Erdmann, Maren Ade's epic dramedy starring Sandra Hüller as Inez, a German executive whose life is consumed with an oil project in Bucharest, and Peter Simonacek as her eccentric, lonely father, Winfried, who crashes into his daughter's world disguised as a life coach named Toni Erdmann, throwing a series of impossible challenges at Inez in the hopes of shaking her out of her torpor. It's a marvelous, spiky comedy about parents, children, and middle management, and ultimately, the liberating power of singing Whitney Houston like your life depends on it, or at least your sanity. If you know, you know. This is Someone Else's Movie.
It's a film, actually, I come back to often. I haven't re-seen it properly for a while, but I just thought the script was so beautiful. I thought the acting is, like Sandra Hüller and all of the ensemble of actors are extraordinary for me. And there's this humor. I just laughed at the, for me, a profound humor that I don't often see in films, like not a cutesy humor or something and the relationship between father and daughter just rings very true to me. So there are many reasons, really. Yeah. It surprised me many times, that film. Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. I was shocked to realize it's been 10 years since the film opened. Yeah. Well, 10 years since Cannes, I suppose. I didn't see it until the fall of 2016 when it came to Toronto at TIFF, but it simultaneously feels very fresh and very, very old. Like the mechanics of it are so classical, really, in terms of the farce machinery of it all. But it's about globalization and corporate structure and all the things that we're still dealing with 10 years later as well. So I guess nothing is new anymore.
Yeah, but that's what I love about it, no? Because it has all those layers of globalization, et cetera, but then it has these father-daughter relationships, and then, of course, all these work relationships.
Yeah, and all of them are on some level silly, like inherently silly. The idea that the human race has evolved to go and sit in meetings about facilities opening in other places. And the one thing that struck me this time is that this film wouldn't happen now because it would all be taking place over Zoom.
Right.
Just in that moment where constant travel, constant face-to-face, all of these presentations, all of these meetings and corporate trainings and employees, like the whole film is about middle management, except that it's about a woman in crisis whose father can see it, and somehow he insists on solving her problems to the detriment of her career, but maybe also not.
Right. It's interesting how you say insists on solving her problems. It's funny, I didn't read it that way. Mm-hmm. It was sort of mysterious why he keeps, for me, he keeps sort of really pushing her buttons, but I guess that's what you mean by that, perhaps. But, he keeps on, trying to, I guess for me, just break that armor that she has around her, in these absurd ways.
His insistence on role-playing as the solution when he himself is already playing the role of the fake consultant of Toni Erdmann, a lifestyle coach who is just sort of patently unbelievable as a human being the moment you see him with the hair and the teeth and everything. And he's just, I don't know how to explain it, but it's such a naturalistic performance of eccentricity.
Right.
That it all feels natural. It feels organic. Everything that happens, even though it's all about escalation and, by the time you realize you are organizing a naked confrontation party with your coworkers, you're so far into it that there's no way out of it. But it seems briefly reasonable for 2 seconds, and it's just enough for him to get his hooks in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But don't you find that all the film feels like that in the sense that I guess that's why I think that's why it lingers and stays with me. It's just, um, it feels authentic. I know that's an overused word, but it really feels these relationships and the acting and the script. It feels, yes, of course, it's pushing it into farce or comedy or whatever label you want to put on it. But I just felt like I'm just not normally in films. I just find there's an artificiality that I'm just not interested, right? I just find it's packaged or whatnot. And yet for this one, yeah, I giggle in an unexpected way, you know. I love that scene at like when she sings, what is it, We Are the Children or something with her father
Oh,
after
the greatest love of all, the Whitney Houston song.
yeah, and there's so many moments like that, or delicate moments when they fight, you know. Oh, I mean, and they're cruel to each other, really, as we can be. All that felt very alive and genuine.
The film understands. I interviewed Maren Ade when she came in for TIFF, and we were instantly on, oh yeah, no, you really have to know someone and love them to insult them that honestly, to see someone so clearly. I think that's one of the reasons so many family comedies are hateful, right? Like it's because they don't capture the specifically American ones, but it's because they don't capture the underlying, like the understanding that families have, that parents and children have, or that cousins have, or siblings, people who've spent their entire lives relating to each other without thinking about how it looks from the outside.
Right.
And then when a movie like Meet the Parents comes along, it's just completely artificial and stilted and cruel, but without the love underneath. There are moments in Toni Erdmann where Inez and Winfried push each other and immediately know they've gone too far,
Mm-hmm.
but then dig in because that's what you do when you're in a fight with someone you love. But that moment where you understand where we on the outside understand where the boundaries are, that's, I think, the most important moment to make it dramatic as well as just a comedy. Like, it's funny, but it's painful in a way that we fully understand in our chests before that fight is over.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. I don't know the other film you're referring to, but and those silences, the timing of those silences between them, at least in my family anyway, so it's very resonant.
It's funny. I had worried that, I did that film critic thing when I first saw it. It's not the running time. It's intimidating, but it's fine. When you're in it, it doesn't feel like it's long. But there was that whole thing of, oh, I don't know if people are going to get this. I don't know if audiences, like North American audiences, Toronto audiences, are going to connect to this. And then I stuck my head in. I cheated and stuck my head in during a TIFF screening, a public screening, just to see how it played. And they were laughing and they were cringing and they were giggling, and there was like this sense of it was rolling for them. And it's just my own snobbery. People watch movies with subtitles all the time. People watch foreign language. People watch foreign things all the time. And without the Germanness of it, I don't think it works. I think you need that specific culture, right, to make these things fly, to understand the rigidity of structure that these characters live in and really like depend on. And Sandra Hüller's outfits are structured
Yes.
and limited and constricting in a way that says everything about who this person is. But also, she moves differently when she's around her father. She acts differently in corporate settings. Obviously, that's her job and she's a professional. But watching the two sort of contaminate each other,
Yes.
even before the party where all the armor comes off, it's funny in itself. It's inherently funny. Like, the barriers to entry just sort of disappear if you pay any attention for 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely, yeah, I agree. I love how you watch her slowly um lose it, I guess is the term you could say, right? When all of a sudden she's crying for a moment, or she's not able to hold it together. Slowly you watch that falling apart into the moment where, I mean, I hadn't got that far but I remember it vividly, to the moment when she's running into the park and hugs this massive, um, costumed
Oh, the
father.
Kukeri.
Yes, father. But the cracks that lead up to that, I found really, um, you know, inspiring, because I think that's very difficult to do in a film. Make that progression work. No.
Yeah. And when we talked about where it came from, she said she was really just going to make a movie about women in corporate. That was it. That was her pitch. And then she spent almost 2 years researching Inez's life.
Hmm.
And then just got contaminated by her own relationship with her father, who was the guy who does odd things to break tension, and even she said that there was a thing with the false teeth where he would put them in when he wanted to tell his kids something serious. And that just barfed onto the script and became its own element. And then ultimately, just like to the point where the film is named after that character, it takes over completely.
Right.
But all of the concerns that she had when she started about globalization and sexism in corporate settings, and all of the power dynamics that come with it, those are all still there. They're disrupted. They're shattered by this oaf who comes in and insists he knows best. And yeah, when I said he's trying to insisting on solving all of her problems, of course it's just an excuse to communicate with her and not have to deal with all the things that are their shared problems. Like, by attacking hers, he can put his to the side. And what we get is just this desperately lonely man who's looking for a way to reconnect with his daughter. And it's not that she's opposed, right? Like, she actually doesn't mind having him in her life. It's just he can be a little much. So the answer to that is to be even more.
Yeah, yeah. But I love the scenes. It's funny, I don't see him. I guess you're right. He is, I guess you could say he's a lonely guy. But I love the tenderness at the beginning with what I remember is, this mad scene at the very beginning with the postman, and then and then his, and his how he is with his mom. And then his dog dies, and you have this sense, and then his with the kids, you have this sense of this guy. I guess would you say lonely, or just that this guy who's, I don't know, some eccentric or whatnot, but um, yeah. Anyway, I'm not sure if I would call him such a loner.
I don't think he is a loner by choice. Like, I think he clearly thrives in crowds, and even with strangers, he's enjoying himself.
Yeah,
But yes, as you say, circumstances have kind of shrunk his world down to a very small space. And this is, I think, his way of getting out of it.
yeah. I mean, I guess it's surprised. The reason I chose this film too is that I guess, after this Oscar business, I'm been working. I put it away, but on a screenplay, a very different fiction screenplay than ever I've done before. And so I find this script, though I'm often pulled to more visually cinematic films, because I mean, for me, this film is really about an ensemble of actors and a really good script. I mean, they're beautiful images, but there's nothing, there's no long pauses in landscapes that you like, no Tarkovsky kind of moments. But I find it, yeah, just that level of, and how it's, even though it's long, it seems very essential, the script and the actors. I mean, and how the actors, how the story unfolds really through these actors.
Mm. Oh no, the character is everything
Hmm.
in this film. And I think it has to be, because if you do pull back in any way, I just watched Tati's Playtime
Oh,
on
right.
a really big screen for the first time in a while, and had forgotten just not how eccentric it is, but how individual, like the whole point of it is the machinery of the city. The individuals barely register. There's a couple of characters who show up throughout. We follow the same group of people, but they're not really subjects. They're participants in this world, but we don't get a lot of time to spend with their characters and see what it is they personally want for themselves. This is the reverse, where potentially there's a big landscape to explore, but we just keep getting stuck in a room with these two characters by
Right.
design, but because the interactions are the only things that Ade is concerned about, I think, anyway. I mean, you can acknowledge everything that's going on in Romania within the scale of the story, but it's ultimately not relevant to the emotional journey that these two people are on towards each other.
Yes, yes, yeah. I don't remember, Norm, because I remember when I saw it in the cinema and I just loved it. And I watched, and I laughed so much, but it also really moved me at many parts. The very ending, and I just curious what you think, because I haven't re-seen it, but the very end, and there's some scene, if I remember, in a garden, and they're together. And that was one moment where I'd like to see again. I will, because I wondered if it felt a little more packaged to me, and the film didn't feel packaged, but that scene felt like, oof, are we trying to wrap it up a little bit? Now it could be just me as a viewer and whatever, but that was the one. I didn't feel that in any other moment. I just curious what you felt.
So this is the scene where Inez takes his teeth and puts them on herself, and he runs to
Yeah,
get the camera. I felt like, I think, given that it's the related to his mother's funeral, Inez's grandmother's funeral, it felt to me like it was just a little passing of the torch. The sense that they'll always be in contact with each other. It does feel like a button, but I
mm,
think it's also the culmination of the relationship that they have now established, like the new strength of their relationship as father and daughter. I think the whole point of the film is that they end up understanding each other a little better, and that's trite, I know, but I don't think the film is about anything more than that, which is why it feels so important that it is reestablished. So yeah, it's just who was David Kep? I've quoted this on the podcast a bunch of times. David Kep said once that he would rather end a film on the potential of happiness than actual happy ever after, and leave you with the sense that these characters are going to make it if they keep working, if they put in the effort. And this feels like that sort of ending to me.
yeah,
We could get, we could just get somebody saying, oh, keep in touch. Like, there could be an actual declarative line about where the goals are, but just the idea that he wants to take a picture of her with the dumb teeth in closes a circle for me. And she
yeah,
seems content in that.
yeah. No, that's a lovely reading of it. Like I say, I need to re-see it again, and it certainly didn't feel like you know, a packaged film like we see so many times. Certainly never got anything close to it, but it was just the one moment where I thought, oof, I'd like to see that again. I'd like to see, and you don't feel, yeah, but you do feel that. I remember feeling that there was, and there was certainly ambiguity in the end because she goes off and you don't, they're not holding hands off, obviously. They're still their strong characters.
Hey, it's Norm interrupting my own show to bring you up to speed on Shiny Things, my newsletter about physical media, culture, and the odd streaming project. Earlier this week, I reviewed the new 4K special editions of Nightcrawler from Shout Studios and Battle of Britain from Australia's Imprint Films, and of course there was yesterday's What's Worth Watching dispatch for paid subscribers. Want to be one? Sign up for a 14-day free trial at shiny-things.ghost.io or find a link at the Semcast Blue Sky account. You like reading about movies? I like writing about them. Come check it out. It's a European ending, right? You're allowed to take what you want from it. But there was, I'm sure it's dead now, there was talk a few years ago of a remake with Jack Nicholson in the lead.
Oh, really?
And I can't see it working in an American milieu. It just doesn't, it's it's too gentle and too subtle
Mm.
for an audience that is raised on bigger, broader comedies. Not that Nicholson couldn't play a father trying to reconnect with his adult kid. It's a big ask, right? Like there's no way it runs as long as it runs. I can't imagine.
You mean they actually did a remake? No?
Well, according to Wikipedia, anyway, on February 7th, 2017, which is a matter of weeks after the film opened, maybe even days in North America, Variety announced that Paramount was going to produce an American remake starring Jack Nicholson and Kristen Wiig, which, okay, I could see that. Produced by Adam McKay, Will Ferrell, and Jessica Elbaum, which would be the female forward version of the Gary Sanchez Productions shingle that they have. And Lena Dunham was going to be a producer, and then Nicholson and Dunham both withdrew in August of 2018, and it's been dead ever since. I can almost see the actors, but I cannot see it working.
Right. Yeah, I can't imagine it, quite frankly, but I thought, can't remember the name of the actor who plays the father, but he's just wonderful.
No, Peter Simonishek.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like you know him in many other films, but I still I don't recognize him in other films, or maybe I would, but I just thought he was just brilliant.
He didn't make a lot of movies. He died. Oh, he died in 2023. I've just discovered, which is, I knew he was gone, but that was more recent than I thought. He was mostly a stage actor, as I understand it.
Okay. But he doesn't overact to me like a stage actor. Well, I guess, I guess part of his character is overacting, I suppose, but there was so much, just the way he held his body when his dog died, or he's in the corridor after they've sung the Whitney Houston song or whatnot. Yeah, I just found he had, like Sandra Hüller, he had so many, it was subtle, his performance,
Yeah. Well, and for a big man, he doesn't consciously take up a lot of space. I think that's what you mean, right?
Yes, yeah, it's a better way of putting it. Yes.
For a stage actor, you're expected to project, but yeah, he turns it off and on because as Tony, he will go big.
Yes.
But when he's just, when he's playing Winifred, he just kind of hides in himself somehow. I don't know how to describe it. He does feel a lot less present when he's not got the teeth in.
He does, and just those moments I'm remembering now, just like when he cooks her dinner and they really haven't connected because she's always busy, and then she's gone to sleep for a nap, but then sleeps for hours. But just those moments I remember when he's in the kitchen and he's clearly inside his head thinking about this. You just really feel for this. You feel for Winifred, who's trying to connect and not being able to connect to his daughter.
Yeah, and we can understand why he's developed this persona. I think they're both. Maybe it's a suggestion. Maybe it's just me reading it, and it feels like they're both prone to depression.
Mm.
And that maybe that's something that connects them, even though they don't want to acknowledge that it does. But he's come up with ways to cope, and she hasn't yet.
What did you call it? What kind of depression?
I think they're both prone to depression. I think just periods of, whatever, right. Just sort of standard package. I don't think it's profound.
Right.
But I can certainly see, basically the way he behaves at the outset of the film, he's in it. Like he's not having a great time. And he's, all of his dog is gone. His friends aren't there. His coping strategies are missing. And so this is what happens. Whereas she'll just push through because, she's an executive and that's how you handle stress. It's just to be pushed down and ignored. But we can tell in that meeting of between the two of them that neither of them is where they want to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd be interested to know. Well, I can look this up, Norm, but I imagine it was a long process of refining that script to get to. I don't know if Maren Ade spoke to you about that process to get, or whether did she improvise with her actors, or maybe that's another conversation, not for here. But because the script feels so sculpted in the acting, I wondered about the process of their filming.
She did say there were readings, but I don't know if that was actually, a sit down table read with the actors or just individual sessions with various characters. We, as is standard with a festival press day, we never have time. But
Right.
she said that most of those 2 years were spent in research. I know she said that she knew who she wanted. She had the actors in mind when she started. So maybe that cut through some of it
Right.
and made it
Right.
easier. Because of course, if you're writing for a given performer, you can shape the text to them even before they ever look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what Sandra, anyway, I'll look it up later, what Sandra Hüller did before this film. But for me, not knowing all her films, but for me, this is the most striking film with her in it that I have seen.
I had seen her in a couple of films. She was in Requiem, which was a fairly decent art house hit by Hans Christian Schmidt. It's about a woman with epilepsy, or possibly epilepsy, possibly possession. It sort of plays with the line between the two. But that was 10 years before this, and then she bounced around European film, and she worked with Jessica Hausner in a film called Amour Fou, and I know she was in a film called Brownian Movement that I've heard of. I've seen posters for, but never actually seen. She's in A Woman in Berlin with Nina Hoss, but it wasn't until Toni Erdmann that she became sort of an instant national, like an international player, recognizable immediately. I mean, you carry a 2 and 3/4 hour movie, that's going to happen. But since then, it's just been a string of incredible. She's worked like directors want her, and uh, actors can't wait to work with her. And she's in Project Hail Mary with Ryan Gosling next month, which is wild to me.
Don't know anything about it, I must say.
It's a giant science fiction epic from Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Uh,
I'm very excited to see it, and I've seen she's in the trailer, and she's playing a character with some level of authority, a science lady, but I don't know anything else. I've been avoiding it aggressively, but from what I understand, it's almost entirely just Gosling in space. So unless she goes up with him, it's a small role, but I guess you cast someone like her, so you instantly have,
right.
an incredible talent who can play with Gosling and bounce off of him, which I really want to see.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Zone of Interest was the one that cemented her for a lot of people, where they suddenly saw her in that and Anatomy of a
Yes.
Fall in the same year, and then just like, this woman can do anything.
Yeah. No, I remember her in both those films for sure. Somehow, I guess well, anyway, somehow she has a range in Toni Erdmann that I don't. I mean, they're different characters, so there's a range of her abilities as an actress that aren't in those other films you mentioned for me anyway.
Well, certainly, and no one has given her a role like that since.
Right.
I don't know how you do, honestly. It's like coming up with, how do you follow. How can I put this? It's such an incredible opportunity for any actor, and she is just so good at conveying everything that script needs her to do, doing it for the camera, doing it with her co-stars. It is a stunning performance, full stop. And I would be terrified if I was asked to do something for that actor. Go on, give her something like Toni Erdmann, something with that kind of challenge. I'd just fall apart.
Yeah, yeah, and there is that layer too, as you mentioned, I think. But well, just that that the story does take place in Germany, you know,
Mm.
and that sort of, at least for me anyway, which that I mean, it's just a stereotype for me. But I remember, but that you don't expect. It's a horrible stereotype, perhaps, but I'll just spit it out. Basically, that Germans are that that can be that funny, that there's at least with me for some reason that was a wonderful surprise, the level of humor, and I guess, as you say, simply because they're also playing with that, that stereotype, and she personifies it as a business, as this entrepreneur, hard entrepreneur. Anyway, that was just a layer, and obvious layer of the film that I liked too.
Yeah, well, it's true. I mean, German comedy tended to be, in my mind anyway, a much broader and less travelable mode, because they're like, I'm thinking of every German comedy that I saw between, like, I don't know, 1992 and 2005, where they're just incredibly broad, incredibly silly, slapsticky. And those were the popular successes. So those were the ones that got out. If there were smaller, more considered, subtle things, we just didn't see them in North America. They didn't make it over here. And then everything changed once digital made it possible for things to be distributed more easily. And you just get this broader spectrum, wider sampling of any given country's output. But also, Ade's films before this weren't funny. I mean, they weren't comedies anyway.
I must see them, Norm.
They're very good. They are out there somewhere. They're on, I think everyone else is on Tubi these days, but they are available streaming. And this was not like those. It was a genuine shock. They're also much, much shorter and tighter. This feels like a completely different, like the arrival of a new mode for her, a different gear of filmmaking.
Have you done anything? I know as a producer, she does a lot of work, but she hasn't done a film since then, has she?
I don't believe so. No. Let me double check. No. Yeah, she was a producer on Spencer, on Pablo Larraín's Diana movie, and there was a film called Delicious that opened last year on the festival circuit. But no, she has yet to make another feature. I'm sure she's working on one. I can't imagine no one would back her. She's got to be. She's running a production company. She's got to be able to. But maybe she's also trying to live up to that challenge and figure out where to go next.
And she's got kids too. That's got to contribute.
That'll slow you down.
But yeah, no, I just know because I would love to see more from her. But I will go back to before Toni Erdmann. So
yeah, I envy people discovering a filmmaker or a body of work or library now, because it is genuinely limitless out there. You can see anything you want and just pursue it and find an interest and dig deep. You know, we didn't have rabbit holes when I was a kid unless you were at the library. Right. It was hell. It was hell.
Yeah.
So now we have the awkward pivot of your own work, and I can see you laughing. I always play the game in my head of why someone chose the film they chose, and you have made is it 13 minutes, 14 minutes?
How long is it? 15 minutes and 20 seconds or something like that. That was for the official selection. That was you had to do, well, it happened to be, the film happened to be that length. And so we thought, oh, it's free. We'll apply to Cannes. But yes, that's the length.
Yeah. You have made a short film with no dialogue. And shall we say no familial relationships.
Yes.
But it is, I would argue, I saw it 2 years ago now, and I would argue it is almost as moving. It's a really powerful examination of existence, of interplay of the natural and the unnatural worlds, and all that stuff that people have been saying about it since it premiered. But it's such a striking project, and yeah, I'm stymied. It has nothing. It has no connection to Toni Erdmann whatsoever.
So why did I choose it? Is that
well, no, I mean, you like what people like what they like. This is my own personal challenge of how do I stitch the two together? But I guess the question is, do you see a resonance? Is there something that connects them in your mind?
Not really. I think it's more of the screenplay I mentioned, Norm, that I'm working on, that I've put aside, which was really hard for me. I resisted all this Oscar campaign, really, because I just really wanted to focus on that screenplay. And it's a new world for me to write a fiction screenplay. I mean, my background's at theater, etc. But so I guess it really comes to mind as more, that idea of working back, and it has actors.
Yeah.
People, and there's dialogue, but it's just that I'm going to be repeating myself, how sculpted and how well, the power of that script and the power of the acting ensemble was just, was in my head with that. Hopefully, is percolating that that screenplay of mine, and in a very different way. I don't mean we necessarily have to go to another film, but I was very excited about seeing Sentimental Value recently too, because I also felt the script was just beautifully done, and I felt the acting ensemble was wonderful. It's not as funny in but it was also surprising anyway, and the way the editing was done in that film too. Yeah, they're just really inspirations for me. But I think my film isn't competing as a documentary short, but it's really a hybrid film. And my biggest inspirations are, as a filmmaker, not that documentary films don't inspire me, but if you ask me really what inspires me, there's certain fiction films. That's what really excites me, and to look more closely at the construction of a film, in so many ways.
Yeah. Well, mentioning Trier that's someone who I was thinking of as well in relation to Toni Erdmann. He's sort of picked up the baton in Ade's absence, like, I suppose. He's making intense, uncomfortable films about communication between families and family members, but also just something like The Worst Person in the World, which is about someone who isn't comfortable in her own skin but insists that she is. That resonates with Toni Erdmann as well, I think.
Of course. Well, I guess, oh yeah, good. Thank you for all that. But I guess that I think my what I'm trying to develop is very different, but that the lead character is very much that'll need to be believable and playful. I mean, it's very common in our humanity, certainly for women anyway. I think for men too, but in a different way perhaps at times. And also I think the Sentimental Value is how he hints at, or the ensemble hints at that sort of multi-generational, or what you call impact of our relationships, of our history, in a way that I thought it's really difficult to do. You could call it generational trauma or whatnot. How does that relate to my three actors in Perfectly a Strangeness? I'll let you make that connection. But certainly in terms of what is percolating inside me, that film was an inspiration on that level. We don't have to talk about the donkeys at all.
I do want to talk about the donkeys a little.
Oh, okay.
I think that just anytime someone makes a film with animals or children, the old joke, don't work with them because they won't do what you want. There is an inherent compromise, I think, assumed in the filmmaking, but you found a way around that by not directing them. Their point is, or the point of them is, that they just exist, and we get to follow along with them. But what is that like as a filmmaker in the moment? How do you sort of bob and weave with what they do, or do you absolutely refuse to engage with them in these moments? Because the film doesn't feel like you've structured your footage around something. There's no sense that you're cutting around something that we're not supposed to see. It's more of an organic follow. So what was your thesis statement going in?
Not sure about a thesis statement, but I had I could talk about it, my whole kind of manifesto of what I wanted to do. Sure. As a filmmaker. I wanted to explore another way of telling a story, for me, of redefine what a story can be. So that was really important to me, to explore that, for myself, and also to create I'm always been inspired by oral traditions. So ever since I was a kid, but that sense of telling an uncontrived, simple story in the best sense of that word, simple, that has many layers and breathing spaces. And then there was, yes, my actors are three animals, but I wanted it, non-anthropomorphic. And anyway, there's more, and I wanted to play with what I consider basic elements of cinema, like light, sound, texture, movement, in a more fundamental reflection, in a fundamental way. But I wrote a treatment in 4 movements, so that yes, we were following the donkeys, but I had them in the first movement. They're in this unnamed desert, and I wanted to get them up the hill into the observatory. So we were directing donkeys, and then the combination of directing them at times because I wanted them to get there, and then of course just being there and however these donkeys are and being with them and following them. But the idea, as you say, four movements are quite simple. They're in an unnamed desert. They discover this abandoned observatory. They explore it, and the observatory comes to life. And then the next morning they leave. But within all that is hopefully the magic of the moments of the donkeys in this beautiful environment, beautiful textured, it's very cinematic environment, and their conversation with this observatory.
It is beautiful. It's really, it's alien without being alien. It's completely recognizable, and yet we understand that we aren't part of it. Is the only way I can explain it. I just found it really mesmerizing, and I really hope people get to see it on a big screen if there's another shot.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Oh, not at all. And best of luck. I am rooting for you, and I'm really excited to see what happens.
Yeah, it is really the Norm David versus Goliath kind of, because it's the only non-studio backed film, the indie film. But hey, that's fun too, to be the out of the box indie.
Yeah, well, and it has the advantage to being unlike any of the others. It is completely different from the pack.
Yes, yeah, that's true.
So fingers crossed.
Yeah, thank you very much.
My thanks to Alison McAlpine, who'll be attending the Academy Awards on Sunday night in support of her documentary short contender, Perfectly a Strangeness, which is now available to stream in North America on the Criterion Channel. You can also find it on Canopy in the US and Crave in Canada. And thanks also to Ali Lemaire-Shedden. She knows what she did. Alison's nominally on Instagram at Alison McAlpine, all one word, but she has yet to actually post there. You can keep up with her at perfectlyastrangeness.com. And you can find Toni Erdmann on Blu-ray from Sony Pictures Home Entertainment in one of those weird manufactured-on-demand deals. It's also streaming on Canada on Hoopla, Plex, and Sundance Now, and available to rent or buy on various VOD services across North America. Oh, and since we recorded this episode, I have seen Project Hail Mary, and it's one of my favorite movies of the year. You want to see that one in IMAX. You can find me on Blue Sky at Norm Wilner, and you can find this podcast there at Semcast, SEMcast, and on the web at someoneelsesmovie.com. The first year of the show is still available for just $20 at payhip.com/Semcast. That's the first 52 episodes of Someone Else's Movie, 40 of which aren't currently available anywhere else. And check out my newsletter, Shiny Things, at shiny-things.ghost.io. I think you'll enjoy it. Our theme song is by The Last Year. If you like it, or the show in general, please say so. Leave a review wherever you've been listening. Every little bit helps, it truly does. And check out the other shows on the Frequency Podcast Network while you're doing that. Stay safe, watch movies, get all the boosters. I'll see you next week.